Released by Capcom in 1999 on the PlayStation, and later ported to multiple platforms, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis would be another sequel to the original installment that takes place concurrently with Resident Evil 2. Directed by Kazuhiro Aoyama, who helped with the first two games, and written by Yasuhisa Kawamura, the game was also produced by Shinji Mikami, the creator of the series. Originally developed as a low-budget side story expansion for Resident Evil 2 and called Resident Evil 1.9, it was released as a standalone installment due to the demands of Sony for the PlayStation, and so the development of the original Resident Evil 3 was renamed Resident Evil 4. For story, it is noticeably shorter than the other installments, as the game takes place one day before the events of Resident Evil 2, and then 2 days after Resident Evil 2. For the first time, the game now features only one main character, Jill Valentine, though a supporting character is played for a brief segment. For gameplay, Resident Evil 3 is largely the same as Resident Evil 2, though now there is a larger focus on action. As a result, enemies are faster, more plentiful, and more mobile to pursue the player, but the player can now dodge attacks, use environmental hazards against foes, craft their own ammunition, and introduce the series' 180-degree turn maneuver. The game also introduced decision points that would result in immediate rewards or changes to the scenario, though didn't really impact the larger story, but select ones did impact how boss fights or the ending scene played out. Most famously, the game introduced Nemesis, a variant tyrant that is smarter and faster than the normal ones that will track and chase the player endlessly in the game, even across rooms and stairs. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with the RECAPitation. On September 27, 1998, 2 months after the events of Resident Evil 1, we see survivor Jill Valentine preparing her escape from Raccoon City as it's fallen to the zombie outbreak. The local law enforcement, as well as Umbrella's private military, are all deployed but fighting a losing battle against the unrelenting horde of undead, and it isn't long before the city is a lost cause. As she takes this last chance for escape the next day after the chaos calms down, Jill still finds herself quickly overwhelmed by the mobs on the street as well. Finding all manner of citizens in despair and hopelessness, she ventures on her own, finding fellow STARS survivor Brad Vickers in the middle of being bitten by a zombie. He then warns her of someone unstoppable hunting STARS members, and they now head for the Raccoon City Police Department. As she's about to enter, a black coat-wearing tyrant named Nemesis leaps down upon Brad and corners him, grabbing him with one arm and executing him with a piercing tentacle. Muttering the word STARS, it turns its attention to Jill, who barely manages to fend it off. Entering the police department, she finds fellow officer Marvin wounded with a report detailing the failure of the police to contain the situation, and finds her own desk with a trusty lockpick and grenade launcher. She then hears a radio transmission come through from a man named Carlos asking for backup, but Nemesis catches up to her with a rocket launcher in tow and she fends it off again within the RPD office. Choosing to leave now and dodging the zombified packs of dogs roaming the streets and giant monstrous fleas crawling the walls, she runs into the same man named Carlos, who's a member of Umbrella's private army who says they were deployed here to help rescue the citizens. Nemesis catches up, forcing them to run for now, but when the coast is clear, Jill makes it clear she doesn't trust Carlos, since Umbrella is at fault for this mess to begin with. Carlos shrugs, explaining he's just a mercenary following orders and doesn't know or care about Umbrella. He restates he's only here to rescue civilians, though that mission has pretty much failed, and urges her to trust him and work together. Moving on to Raccoon City Hall and onto a tramcar, Jill meets the rest of Carlos' surviving team, including Sergeant Nikolai and an injured Lieutenant Mikhail. At first, Nikolai doesn't trust Jill because she is a STARS member, but Carlos vouches for her. He explains there's a landing zone next to the clock tower where they can call in an extraction chopper, and they plan to use this tram to get there safely. Unfortunately, it needs a few parts repaired, and as they search, Nikolai strangely seems to trigger an explosion, catching himself in it. As Jill continues on the repair mission herself, she navigates past more hordes of zombies and birds, and gets past the wreckage of the city. She catches up to Carlos, who struggles to deal with a friend who is about to turn into a zombie and asks to die. Reluctantly, he ends his friend, but is too kind-hearted after all and leaves ahead. No place is safe from the outbreak threat, as there is danger literally around every corner now, and even Nemesis makes a fresh appearance. She defeats it and stuns it again, even as it persists after her with some unknown ability to know exactly where she's going to be. As she escapes, the ground gives way under her feet as she is dropped into the same tunnels as a voracious monstrous millipede mutated by the virus. Escaping that for now, she returns to the mercenaries with the parts they need to get it running. Carlos returns too, and she shares that they lost Nikolai, so they decide to move forward. Nemesis crashes into their tram, and Mikhail tells Jill to move ahead as he holds it off. Unloading everything he has into it, Mikhail is no match for Nemesis, and dying anyway, he decides to go out with a bang, taking out a grenade and blowing himself up with Nemesis. While the sacrifice does shake Nemesis off their trail, it also takes out their brakes and they careen off the rails and smash into the clock tower they needed to get to. Jill and Carlos manage to dodge any major injury, and as they move onward and upward the spider-infested clock tower, Nemesis is never too far behind. Jill manages to ring the bell of the clock tower, which is the signal for the rescue chopper, and as help is on the way, the relief is fleeting as a rocket suddenly flies out, strikes the chopper and sends it crashing down. As Nemesis reveals itself as the one to fire the shot, it leaps down on Jill now and stabs her with his tentacle, poisoning her with the virus now. She stuns Nemesis again, this time causing it to stumble into the nearby flames and collapse, but Jill now collapses due to her infection, though fortunately Carlos is not far behind, able to save her for now. Jill wakes up 2 days later with Carlos tending to her and is very concerned that she knows she's infected but doesn't feel anything. The player now takes control of Carlos, who heads to the nearby hospital to try and find some way to help Jill. Things don't look hopeful as he instead finds the hospital overrun by a new type of hunter BOW. He is surprised to find another mercenary who's been shot and claims it was Nikolai, whom Carlos thought was dead. The man puts a gun up to Carlos, not knowing who to trust, but an explosive booby trap kills him. By a stroke of luck, Carlos finds this hospital was an Umbrella facility testing an experimental vaccine and follows the instructions on how to synthesize it. As he leaves, he sees the whole building is rigged with explosives and gets out just in time as a hospital and hope for a cure is destroyed right behind him. En route back to Jill, Carlos is suddenly jumped by Nemesis, now much more mutated than before, and manages to fend it off long enough to get away. Making it back to Jill, he administers the vaccine and she claims to feel better already, and he also shows Nikolai not only alive but now their enemy. Carlos runs ahead, saying he has to take care of something and will meet up with her later, and the player resumes control of Jill. Stretching her legs with another confrontation with Nemesis, she cuts through Raccoon Park and finds another man who's been shot to death and not killed by the local monsters, with orders from a group called the Supervisors, who have explicit orders to observe and collect combat data on the Umbrella mercenaries in regards to their guinea pig and its missions, as well as destroy the hospital and any evidence within of experimentation. She then finds a hut in the cemetery with a secret room within and reports from the Supervisors, observing the effects of the outbreak on the citizens and wildlife in the city, along with suggestions of future weaponization. She also finds out the name of Nemesis and its mission to hunt and destroy STARS members as a test for its aptitude. Finally, there is a notice that the Raccoon City project will be abandoned as the government will destroy the city tomorrow. She's caught by Nikolai, who did fake his death earlier, and he explains he has an employer who is paying him to observe and report the combat effectiveness of the outbreak. He admits, however, that his team was not meant to be overrun as easily as they were, but this too is valuable data. A violent tremor scares off Nikolai, who knows it's a mutant nearby, and the giant millipede from before, codenamed Gravedigger, erupts from the ground, collapsing everything around it. Jill has no choice but to fight and survive as she manages to trick it into getting electrocuted to death. Getting out and catching up to Carlos, Carlos shares with her he learned the army will fire a missile into the city at daybreak and wipe everything out, but also learn of a chopper on a nearby helipad they can use to escape. As they now hurry to escape the city, Jill is fired upon by Nikolai, who confesses he killed all the other supervisors so only he will get out alive with valuable information, and thus be paid top dollar for what he knows. Jill then wonders why he's trying to kill her since she's not a supervisor, and he says a special bounty has been placed specifically for her head. Suddenly, something grabs Nikolai from above and kills him, ending his threat there, though not far, the rampaging Nemesis continues his chase for Jill. She edges out a win in a waste disposal room and triggers a sequence that tosses Nemesis out with the trash into a pool of acid. With not much time left before the expected missile, Carlos radios Jill that he's with the chopper, and Jill passes through another experimental Umbrella hangar housing a test railgun. To her surprise, the partial remains of Nemesis leaps in and mutates tremendously into a hideous but gigantic abomination. Powering up the railgun, she tricks Nemesis into its firing path, and the persistent tyrant is finally reduced to a smoldering but still writhing corpse. Picking up a nearby magnum, Jill fires round after round into Nemesis, showing the true tenacity of a STARS member, until enough is enough and Nemesis finally blackens and dies. As the game ends, Carlos says the second chopper has come specifically for her, and she's surprised to find its fellow STARS survivor Barry Burton here, telling her he wouldn't let her die. He tells her Umbrella will pay for this, as they watch the missile veering straight for the city. The impact blankets the city in fire, vaporizing everything, as Raccoon City is gone in an instant, and Umbrella succeeds in covering up the incident they caused. As Jill survives another nightmare, she says out loud that Umbrella has gone too far, and she intends to take them down. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis has enjoyed the success of selling over 3.8 million copies worldwide.